Welcome back, deep divers. Ready to, dive into a topic that's, well, let's face it, sometimes a little, uncomfortable.
Yeah, those conversations that can sometimes feel like navigating a minefield.
Exactly. And we've all been there, right? Today, we're tackling criticism in romantic relationships, specifically how to handle it without, turning dinner into a war zone.
Right, because those moments when your partner is pointing out something you might not want to hear, well, they can make or break a relationship, can't they?
Absolutely. But the good news is we've got some seriously practical advice to help us all turn those opportunities for growth into, well, actual opportunities for a stronger connection.
And we're pulling these insights from some of the latest research on communication and relationships. So we're talking evidence-based tips, not just, someone's opinion.
Love it. Okay, so let's get into it. Where do we even begin with this whole handling criticism thing? I mean, it's not exactly our favorite activity, is it?
No, not exactly. And, there's a reason for that. It turns out our brains are kind of wired to see criticism as this big, scary threat, even if it's coming from a good place.
Really? Even if it's like, hey, you forgot to take out the trash again.
Well, maybe not that extreme. But seriously, even seemingly small criticisms can trigger that primal fight-or-flight response.
Hmm.
Our defenses go up, and we stop really listening.
Okay, so that explains why I sometimes feel like I'm about to launch into a full-blown debate when my partner just wants me to, like, fold the laundry differently.
Exactly. So the first tip, and this might sound deceptively simple, is to actually listen. And, I mean, really listen.
Oh, man, this is where I confess I sometimes struggle. I catch myself planning my rebuttal before my partner's even finished talking, not my proudest moments.
I think we've all been there.
Mm.
But active listening, truly tuning into what they're saying, both the words and the emotions behind them, is key.
So it's not just about hearing the words, but understanding where they're coming from emotionally.
Exactly. Mirroring, repeating back what you heard, and validating their feelings, even if you don't agree, can be incredibly powerful. It shows you respect their perspective.
Right. It's like saying, hey, I hear you. Your feelings are valid. Even if you're thinking, but I did unload the dishwasher last week.
Exactly. It's about creating that safe space for open communication. And that leads us to another important tip, acknowledging when they have a point.
Which can be tough, right? Because nobody likes to be wrong.
True, but it's not about winning the argument. It's about building trust. Because if someone constantly feels dismissed, that trust erodes over time.
Makes sense. And honestly, sometimes they do have a point. So how do we acknowledge that without, like, turning it into a whole thing?
It can be as simple as saying, you know what, you're right about that, or I understand why you feel that way. You don't have to agree with everything, but finding those little nuggets of truth can go a long way.
Okay, that seems doable. But what about keeping our cool in the heat of the moment? It's like trying to have a rational conversation while riding a roller coaster sometimes.
That's a great analogy. Because when emotions are running high, it's tough to think straight. That's why learning to manage those emotions is crucial.
Easier said than done, though. Any practical tips for how to actually do that? Because telling myself to calm down in the middle of an argument never seems to work.
Right, it's not about suppressing those emotions, but rather finding healthy ways to express them. Deep breaths are your best friend. Seriously. They can be surprisingly effective in those moments.
I've heard that before, but I always feel a little silly trying to do deep breathing exercises in the middle of a disagreement.
I get it. But even just taking a few conscious breaths can help shift your physiology and calm your nervous system. And sometimes taking a temporary break from the conversation altogether is necessary.
Like a timeout.
Exactly. It's not about running away from the issue, but about giving yourselves a chance to cool down before things escalate. Just saying, hey, I need a few minutes to process this can be a game changer.
It's like hitting the pause button instead of letting things spin out of control. Which leads us to another crucial point. Responding thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively.
Absolutely. A knee-jerk reaction is rarely our most eloquent or constructive self. Taking that extra beat to really think about our response can make all the difference.
It's the difference between, well, maybe if you hadn't, and actually hearing what they're saying and formulating a thoughtful response.
Exactly. And instead of defaulting to defensiveness, try shifting the focus to understanding. Instead of, it's not my fault, you could say, I understand why you're frustrated, and I want to figure this out together.
So shifting from me versus you to us versus the problem.
Exactly. And that brings us to our final and perhaps most important tip, focusing on solutions.
Okay, tell me more about that. How do we move from criticism to, actually resolving the issue?
It's about turning a potentially negative situation into a collaborative problem-solving opportunity. Instead of seeing it as a competition, you're on the same team working towards a common goal.
I love that. So it's about asking, okay, we've identified something that's not working. How do we fix it together?
Exactly. Instead of dwelling on the problem, you're brainstorming solutions. Ask each other, what concrete steps can we both take to make things better?
Okay, I'm feeling empowered already. So we've got our 5 power tips for handling criticism like pros. Listen actively, acknowledge valid points, manage those emotions, respond thoughtfully, and focus on finding solutions together.
And remember, it's a process, not a destination. We're all works in progress. But even small shifts in the way we communicate can have a ripple effect on our relationships.
That's so true. And at the end of the day, isn't that what we all want? Stronger, more fulfilling relationships. And hey, if it takes a little bit of conscious effort to get there, it's worth it.
100%.
As a final thought for our listeners today, what's one small step you can take to improve your own response to criticism? Something to ponder as you go about your day. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive, everyone.